Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. In the latest videos, we talked about the situation on the front line and specifically the Russian plan for what they want to achieve. And we see that plan coming to fruition with both Russian sources are claiming certain things happening that are confirming that plan. And secondly, from Ukrainian sources are also coming confirmations that are again confirming the Russian plan. The situation with Ukraine is that Ukraine has a good plan to resist Russian aggression and they have a good plan on how to counterattack and retake the territory. The problem is Ukraine doesn't have resources, so until the resource question is resolved, Ukraine is going to be struggling. But what confirmation we're hearing from the Russian side? Most notably, we hear the dismissal of the fact that anything that Russia is doing is going to be poised to attack around the northern side of Ukraine, where it's going to try to attack towards Kyiv or anything else. The main indicators about this are that Russia is not preparing massive logistical chains in the area. They are not gathering forces, they are not massing forces. What they are massing forces for are exactly what we discussed in our latest videos, which is specifically focusing on the eastern side of Donbass, which is Russian goal, and I believe that's going to be the ultimate goal of Russian offensive in the summer. The goals are, just to kind of remind you very quickly without going in details, the attacks around Bakhmut, the attacks around the Vuhledar or Avdiivka axis, and some action probably around Robotina, though this is less likely. And we see Russians preparing. The total estimates right now, the latest one that I've heard was that Russia is preparing somewhere around 50,000 freshly gathered troops in addition to whatever meat is already on the ground present. Some additional coordinated forces of about 400 tanks and additional about 1,000 infantry fighting vehicles, be it armored trucks, armored vehicles, and everything else. So it's a sizable force, nothing that, like, let's put it this way. It's not the numbers that Russia would need if they want to take a city like Kharkiv or even the agglomeration of Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, but it feels that Russia thinks that they can win Ukraine in a long war, they can push through the Donbass at least, and therefore continue. Russia right now is playing on this perspective as, oh, we're going to continue pushing, we're going to continue taking territory, despite the fact that every single military analyst is saying that the losses that Russia is taking are not worth it. For Russia right now, the most important thing is to create a pretty picture, a picture of a map, and then map being colored more red than green. Therefore, essentially Russia taking Ukraine as pro-Russian shills, despite the fact that in reality, the advances of Russian are minuscule and the losses that are incurred are horrendous. But Ukrainians are also doing something, and we've heard latest news about the situation around the Krinky area. I know this is not something we've talked about for a while now, but apparently Krinky bridgehead has been, or sorry, beachhead more likely because there's no bridge, has been expanded about 500 meters towards the western direction. So it became a little bit larger. Again, I don't see how this might play until Ukraine receives additional resources. But just to kind of note that Ukraine still controls a certain territory on the left bank of the river Dnipro here, and this might be useful if finally the Western allies start supplying Ukraine with weapons and ammo. All things considered, Ukrainians right now, we've heard the conference between the Zelensky and Kirill Budanov, that they came out and said that Russia is indeed preparing this new offensive, from most probably on the east. They didn't mention specific direction, but they shouldn't also. And they are also saying that they will have the strength to stop Russia, which I am absolutely confident is. We've talked about this many times, that Ukraine has the strength to resist, to make sure that Russia pays incredible price for every hundreds of meters that they're trying to advance. However, they will be advancing because to stop their advancement and to go on the offensive, Ukraine would need significant increase in resources supplied. And this is what we all hope will finally happen once US passes the Ukrainian aid bill. And I do believe that it will pass with the latest situation around security of the world changing a bit. But one of the important things on this channel is to cut through bullshit. And we need to very clearly, I try to make this statement every time, and it is that the politicians are lying to you. They want us to be in a situation where we feel safe, that we feel that we are in control, that whatever is happening in Ukraine is being controlled. However, the reality is that our politicians are shit. And I know that right now in UK, the Tory government and Tory political party is not much in favor, so we shouldn't be looking too much into their statements. We should be more listening to what Keir Starmer is saying and more of the Labour Party. However, right now, David Cameron, after the situation with Israel, which I'm not covering on this channel, maybe we can talk about this on a stream, but my focus is on Ukraine. And after this situation where the Allied jets shut down Iranian drones and missiles that came for Israel, after that, David Cameron was asked, well, why cannot we do it for Ukraine? And we got our consequential, oh my God, escalation. We could never do it. Let's be very, very clear that this is a complete bullshit argument. It has no grounds for existing. Preventing civilian targets to be struck is not escalation. Preventing critical infrastructure to be struck is not escalation. Defending the country, defending civilian targets is not escalation. There is nothing that Russia would... it's not even if Russia would perceive it as escalation. Escalation is non-existent with Russia. Putin is a dictator, and as a dictator, he understands only strength. We saw them. Every time that Putin was met with strength, he backed down. Every time where we started drawing red lines for ourselves, Putin was just marching forward, escalating and escalating and escalating. Our response to escalation by Russia is not an escalation on our part. Defending people is not escalation. Preventing civilian deaths is not escalation. I will continue repeating this every time until bullshit like this stops coming out of politicians' mouths. Because no matter how much of the allies, no matter of their rhetoric in support of Ukraine, they need to be held out accountable for the words they're saying that, oh my God, we cannot allow ourselves to get involved. We must not fall into this because we need to get involved now until this conflict spills over. The more Ukrainians are in fight, the more Ukrainians stay alive, the more safer we in Europe are. And this is additionally very, very sad because Ukrainians now are, I don't know how to put this into some kind of perspective, because we're saying, okay, we are not going to shoot down the missiles, to which Ukraine answers, well, could you please help us? Could you provide us with the anti-air systems that can protect our cities? To which the ally says, like, well, you know, we don't have a lot of systems. We really need to protect ourselves. And this is my point. If Russia is beat in Ukraine, there is nothing that's going to threaten Europe. What's the point of building a protective network right now in Europe if it can be done in Ukraine and Ukraine will stop Russia and then there is not going to be any threat? So we continue in these weird discussions where Ukrainian civilians just get killed. Ukraine continuously asks for help, and the only thing we come to say is like, oh my God, additional civilians died, whatever we're going to do. Everything is too slow. Everything is always too little, too late. This needs to stop. I will not stop repeating this, despite the fact that we unfortunately have normalized genocide on the European continent of civilians. Now, apparently, civilians being struck every day, people living in the air alarms, children running away in fear is now normalized because Well, Ukraine is in a state of war. What you gonna do? Wow, what a fucking joke. But thankfully, European countries are doing certain things, and we see that support is growing somewhat. We see initiatives happening, and there's going to be initiatives coming with this channel as well, specifically with drones and other technologies. But we see Netherlands cooperating with Denmark. Oh my God, yes, Denmark and Germany and so on, doing additional work for Ukraine, providing additional capabilities with drones. So thank you so much to the people of the Netherlands, to the people of the Germany and everyone else that support Ukraine. This weekend I was in Sweden and I met a person that was Swedish, and she went to Ukraine because she couldn't believe, because it was so black and white about the situation that was happening there. And it was very heartwarming to meet her, that there are people that really care for Ukraine. After that, I stopped in Copenhagen to change buses, and I was met with people that recognized me, and they've showed me that there is an actual initiative happening in Copenhagen where people are coming up with Ukrainian flags to support Ukraine, to show the support for Ukraine. Great job. We just need to keep up pressure on our politicians so we cut out all of the BS and understand that defending Ukraine now is a huge investment in our security. But talking about factual things that are very interesting, sometimes I talked about the different articles that I'm reading of the analytics. I will not be reading them whole because mostly you can read for yourself, but I will be leaving a link in description and a couple of things from this interesting article where different analysts, Ukrainian, this is article, so you can auto-translate this. But in this article, they talked about the Russian production of tanks. Most notably, they talk about what has been counted by different sources that are counting the vehicles on the Russian bases, and more importantly, do certain corrections that are, for example, prevalent in the Western type commentary, where, for example, Western type commentary is stating that Russia is making some 100 tanks a month. And they're explaining that, well, to be honest, making is a little bit of a stretch. A better word to use would be generate, because majority of these tanks are coming from the facilities. And they're mentioning that during 2023, Russia was able to produce all new only 60 T90M tanks. That is very, very different from the hundreds and thousands that pro-Russian shills would make you believe. And this is because Russia has hit somewhat of a production ceiling. The amount of available workforce for Russia, unfortunately, is dwindling. The same people that needed to work on the factories are also the same people that Russia wants to be part of the war, of the meat grinder, to want to go to Ukraine and die there. However, the issue is it's not really increasing anyway much. And the number of workforce and facilities for Russians to work are also not being built and increased as much. Due to this, there are problems with the production rates for Russia, and especially because the Western components, despite all of the sanctions, despite going around this, and I know it's a painful topic that we discussed plenty on this channel, Russia is still having troubles growing the production. Russia is having troubles increasing these factories. Therefore, the tank production, for example, that is discussed here, is not growing. Russia is about steady. There is a slight increase, but it's not as dramatic as we saw from the beginning of war, where Russia, for example, took existing factory, put it a 3-shift work day, 24 hours a day, and then it's received a significant boost in their production facilities. Now that they need to invest in these facilities and build, they suddenly find out that they don't have the tools, they don't have the facilities, and they don't have the capacity to produce. So this article culminates in 3 scenarios for Russian tank production. And this is obviously here is estimated tank production, but I think it's fair to assume that this is also accurate for the majority of Russian components, so to say, like heavy components like infantry fighting vehicles and so on. And the optimistic scenario is about 12 to 18 months. A moderate rush scenario is about 18 to 24 months, where they would probably get an increased capacity of production of their own. And a pessimistic scenario in case of DPRK and China starts producing Russian components and start producing tanks for Russia or something like this. Then we can see that it's going to be over 26 months until Russian tank production and Russian stocks starts dwindling. All in all, as I said, Russia still have enough firepower to fight this for about 2 years comfortably. This is something we need to deal with, but important thing that these is 2 years at which Russia will start going down. Their potential will start going down. Therefore, if we wanted to discuss for how long Ukraine needs to stay in a fight before Russia is going to start, well, quote unquote, losing their attrition warfare, 2 years. That's your answer. But to finalize, I want to call on you guys. I want to say huge thanks to all 256 people that have already participated in our current campaign to support the Ukrainian armed forces. Please consider supporting them if you have the ability. We are going to be delivering the equipment specifically to the Ukrainian armed forces. Please, please, we are very close, just 4,000 missing. Let's do it. I love you all. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you guys next time.